Hi everyone, my name is Laura Brass. Welcome to today's workshop, which is dedicated to race and ethnicity. This is the fifth drop-in session centered around women's issues. This project, called Feminist Pedagogies, is a collaboration between UBC Edith Landau Virtual Learning Center and Vancouver Community College. Today's moderator is Tasneem, a fellow UBC grad student and one of the Learning Center members. Hi, Tasneem. Thanks for helping us run things smoothly. I would also like to acknowledge Dr. Jennifer Jensen. She's a professor at UBC and also director of the Learning Center. She is the one who has made this project possible. And on behalf of everyone here today, I'd like to thank her for bringing us all together to learn and to share our thoughts and experiences. Moving on, today's guest speaker is Dr. Keisha McPherson, who is an educator and scholar with over 15 years of experience teaching social justice, equity in education, media, and cultural studies. I attended two of her talks, and on both occasions, I was blown away by the way she talks about her research. Her passion and charismatic presence are very engaging. And so I feel privileged to have her joining us today. And with that, I will give the floor to Dr. Keisha McPherson.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Laura, for having me, and just welcome to everyone. And thank you for welcoming me into your class. It's so exciting for me to be here. I'm from Toronto. I am in Toronto. It's 6:38 where I am right now. So there's a bit of a time. I'm in the future. so that's one thing to think about. So I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about race and ethnicity. I have an understanding of the feminist pedagogy's focus of the workshops that you've been accessing so far throughout your course. And I'm really excited to be here for a number of reasons. So I do know that this is an English language learning class, and some of you are new to Canada, or everybody is new to Canada. And that's kind of where I come in. I'm a second generation Canadian. So let me share my slides because I wanted to just introduce myself a little bit better, and then just go into talking about race and ethnicity a little bit here. So hopefully everybody can see. Okay, so I'm going to be focusing on race and ethnicity specifically in context to Canada. And what I'm really excited about in terms of this group of students and sort of being a part of this space that you're in and sort of learning about Canada, learning about different concepts and language that is important for us to know and understand. I'm a second generation Canadian. And what that means is that my parents came here as immigrants from Jamaica. They came in the 60s. And during this time, there was this big immigration movement that was taking place, drawing people from the Caribbean to come to Canada. And a lot of that was because Canada was still fairly new in terms of a country and needed a lot of development. And so a lot of the Caribbean immigrants that came into the country, they came in and they were doing domestic roles, domestic jobs, and so forth. And my parents were two of those people. And they actually met in Canada. They're both Jamaican, but met in Canada. And that's why I'm here. I was born and raised in Toronto. I went to both Catholic and public school in terms of education. I always put my education here too because I am an educator. And so it's really interesting to see which perspectives and ideologies we come from with our education. When I think about myself in terms of identity and looking at the feminist theme of the talks that you've been participating in so far, I think it's important for me to mention where I situate myself. So in identity research, or when we're thinking even about feminist research, a lot of times we talk about our social location. And that's how we describe ourselves in context to all of the social categories that exist within our society. And so for me, I am a mother. I have a 20-year-old daughter. I am a daughter, of course, because my mother gave birth to me. I'm a sister. I have 3 sisters. And I'm a best girlfriend. You know, I have lots of friends, and, you know, the circle in which I have in terms of those relationships are really important to my position here and in terms of the things that I do. So I wanted to first give us a broad understanding of these concepts and terms that are very, very important. And language, as you are learning right now, especially looking at the English language, can be sometimes complicated when you place it in context to your mother tongue or to the language that you might be speaking. And it's sort of like trying to figure out what the language or the English word is in terms of the connection between the languages that you are speaking. So race, ethnicity, and culture. I added culture. I'm focused on race and ethnicity, but I thought culture was really important because I think culture also sort of speaks to our experience that, again, comes from ethnicity. So first, race. I know that many of you, or probably everybody, has heard this concept before and probably has an understanding of what it is. Now, if you come from a country that has predominantly the same race or the same sort of physical characteristics of the people and the citizens, you might not concentrate on race as much as you would in Canada, because Canada is a very diverse country, and therefore race becomes a little bit more visible. Right? So race is a socially constructed category. So it is something that has been created. When we say that something is socially constructed, it's been created. And it focuses on the biological traits usually of a person, and it helps to describe and categorize people based on those groups. So one of the things that is really important for us to remember is that race is socially constructed. That means that it was created as a part of a system of control. And we usually call that system, or sort of name that system, as white supremacy. And what happens with that is it maintains a specific order that we can see very much in our experiences in Canada. So when we think about race, we're thinking about biological markers. So I consider myself to be a Black woman, and I'm belonging to an African, I'm belonging to the Black race, which is also categorized as African. And that's another thing that we can see with race. There's different terminology and different language that is used to describe people of various groups throughout the world. Now, ethnicity is a little bit different. We can have people that are of different race and of the same ethnicity. And so ethnicity is a broader than race, and it usually has to do with our cultural experiences, our religious practices, traditions, ancestry, language. All of that is sort of describing in reference to our ethnicity. And so sometimes our race might be one thing and our ethnicity is another thing. And you might meet somebody that has a different race than you are, or categorized differently than you are, but then share the same ethnicity, right? And so considering that I am from Jamaican parentage, I consider my ethnicity to be Jamaican, which I really then start to think about the language, the culture, the food, the religious practices, all of those things that ethnicity is really supposed to help us to understand. And going into ethnicity, then culture is also really important for us to understand in reference to how ethnicity really supports the cultural backgrounds that we come from and the different traditions that we might have in our native countries, the different ways in which we might speak, how we use language, how we use gestures, all of that is a part of the culture. And so we see that wherever we move to or wherever we go to, there's a new set of cultural norms that we have to learn based on the places that we are in and the geographical location, and all of the different like races and ethnicities that might make up a space that we're in. So we're focusing here on race, ethnicity, and culture when we try to explain and try to describe the differences of people in reference to their identity. Now, placing this in context, race and ethnicity are commonly used and often interchangeable, but as we can see from the definitions I provided, they mean different things. So when we think about race, we're thinking about something that's biologically marked on us. When we're thinking about ethnicity, we're thinking about, where we are geographically and that the cultures and the traditions that sort of come through that in reference to developing our ethnicity. Now, in Canada, these categories are particularly important to the social order and organization of our society. And so you will see that happening as your day-to-day, going to the store, maybe accessing education services, accessing healthcare. There's different ways that we have not necessarily really dealt with some of the difficult and complicated history of Canada that makes race and ethnicity somewhat complicated in some sense. So as a result of Canada's complicated history with race, these categories of identity are often also create inequitable situations and circumstances. And that's when we get into some of the words that I noticed you have been given access to from your handout. We're thinking about prejudice, we're thinking about discrimination. When we think about these different markers of identity that really get people to categorize us in a specific way, and we look at the dominant cultures in Canada, it really leads to some undesirable circumstances and situations that often really create barriers for people within our society. So these are some things that you can think about in context to race, ethnicity, and culture as well. Now, one of the important pieces, and this comes up in my research, one of the important pieces with race and ethnicity in Canada is thinking about Canada as a multicultural society. I'm sure you've heard that word before. And really, that is really supposed to describe the ways in which all of us coming from various parts across the world have sort of convened onto this land, Canada, and we are living together. And so this has been an ongoing process that the government of Canada actually had to set out to describe it and to name this process of all of these different groups of people coming together. And so Canada is considered to be a multicultural society. And what multiculturalism was meant to do was to preserve the cultural freedom of individuals. So going back to that word of ethnicity, for example, all of the different traditions might come in with people from various ethnicities that are now living in Canada. Now, when you think about how do we preserve those cultural freedoms? How do we keep our culture and our tradition? And the government of Canada, seeing all of these different groups of people living in the country, sort of set out to create something that allows us to preserve that. Now, there's always complications with multiculturalism in reference to how it is applied and whether or not it is fairly applied for all the people within our society, but it's just really important for us to understand some of the gains and some of the ways in which our government has positioned these terms to then really accommodate for the various groupings of people from diverse races, diverse ethnicities, and diverse cultures. Now, I think it's also important for me to recognize that when we have race, we have the other side or the negative ideology that comes from some of those undesirable and unequitable experiences, such as racism. So when we think about what race does, when we're categorizing people based on their biological skin and some of the discrimination that they might face is referenced as racism. Now, I don't have a slide specifically with the definition of racism, but I thought it was important to place this in context to Canada and multiculturalism. So when we think about racism in terms of the discrimination people might face because of the labeling and because of these categories that have not been fully accommodated for within Canada, we can see that there's a number of groups of people, actually most people of color have faced some sort of discrimination and racism within this country. So I've been able to pull some statistics. 70% of Black Canadians have faced racism within this country. Indigenous people, we're looking at 49%. And again, these are just broad statistics. They don't necessarily represent something that is actually fully accurate, but it gives us an idea that these things exist or that these complications and these problems exist. Now, other non-white Canadians, so that are people of color, they 48%. So these numbers are pretty high, you know, and white Canadians only make up about 18%. So we're looking at a system of racism that really affects all different people, all different groups of people in terms of race and in terms of ethnicity. Now, just to end, I wanted to focus a little bit about my research approach. So taking all this information about race, about ethnicity, as a professor in Toronto, one of the things that I focus on is bringing out some of these statistics and getting information from people from diverse groups so that we can better understand what the experiences are of people that are racialized. That's a word that we use to sort of describe people who are a part of a race that is identified and marked in our country. And so my research really focuses on racialized people. And I often take a focus that allows me to blend in a number of different fields. So focusing specifically on feminism and where this sort of fits in, the work that I do is focused on girlhood studies. It's grounded in Black feminist theory. And what I do with girlhood studies is some of the discrimination that I just sort of tried to describe for you really focuses or sort of impacts Black girls in specific ways. And so my research helps me to understand what they're experiencing on a day-to-day basis. What are some of the gaps that they're experiencing in reference to education, in reference to healthcare, and just all of the different cultural dynamics that come into play with their experience living in Canada, because we have to deal with issues of racism. So my research takes a feminist approach to really identify what some of those issues are and to describe them in scholarship. So I take my time to write journals. I will write, I'll speak at conferences. I also use this information within my undergraduate classes at Toronto Metropolitan University, which was formerly called Ryerson. And I use this experience so that I can share that. Now, the more knowledge we have about the issues that each individual groups have in our society, the barriers that they might face, and how we can go about supporting to make sure that we're moving towards an equitable country is really what we're trying to do, or what I try to do as a researcher and make my contribution. I use community engaged approaches. So I like talking to community groups of people who are living and just sort of experiencing their life on the ground. And I'm trying to also focus on highlighting the voice of everyday people in my research. And that is really how I focus on race and ethnicity in my research, and the way in which it is grounded in feminist theory. And that's me. Thank you very much. That's good.
Well, thank you so much, Keisha. Keisha, am I right?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Yes, thank
Great.
you.
Thank you so much. You are so young. You know that I can't believe that you have a daughter that she's
I know.
20. Great.
Yes, I do. I only look young, but I
you
also,
know,
yeah.
your heart is young. You both.
Yeah.
Know that it's very difficult for me. That's how can I separate race and then especially race and ethnicity.
Right.
It's very usually in both of them. And now a little bit I'm confused that racism, race, it depends on the our genetic, and ethnicity, it's related a place, or I can understand really good that is it ethnicity. I think that when I translate it, I don't have when I translate it, I got it that it's something territory, yeah. And then if I wanted to separate it such as this, that okay, racism is related in our gene, and then the ethnicity is related to our which part of the world we grow up.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that it is a little confusing because of those reasons. And then you might not have a word in your language that directly translates to ethnicity in terms of how we use it in Canada. I mean, sorry, in English. Sorry. There's lots of places that speak English, not just Canada. Yeah. So you might not, but you're right. Race has to do with the biological marker. It's our biological markers in reference when race was created. So it's really important for us to understand race is not real, even though we talk about it in real terms because it has significance to our lives. It's not a real way in which we can divide ourselves that, you know, is sort of biological, like biologically makes sense. And so race was created to then create different levels of hierarchy or like power and control in our society. And so by virtue of it being created, it's really just categories that have been about what we look like and how we can describe what a person looks like. So originally when race was created, they only created 3 categories for race. They created white, Black, and what they called, which is an offensive, which is not a term that we would use right now, but it would be to reference Asian in terms of a group, right? And so as you can see, there's a number of different groups of people that are left out of there, right? There's a number of different groups of people have left out of there. That is just to show you that it's socially created and doesn't really have a biological significance, but it has a social significance in our society. So even though it's not a real thing that we should think about, we are treated based on the race that people ascribe to us based on looking at us or, asking a question. So you can clearly see that I'm Black, and therefore my, ancestors come from Africa. And that's a specific racial category that people who look like me can easily classify themselves. It's not always easy for other groups of people to classify themselves because of how race really is very subjective. It's not something that is easily to define, but it's still very important for us to understand. Now, ethnicity, on the other hand, is easier because ethnicity really allows us to just connect to where we come from, our cultural practices, our language, and that becomes the ethnic group. So for example, I consider myself in terms of ethnicity to be Jamaican, but there's different ways that we can think about ethnicity. You can think about it based on the country that you're in. If it's a religious group, you can think about it based on the religion that you practice and the group, because if you think about like Muslim as a religion or like Islam, there's many different segments of that. And so those make up different ethnicities within that religion. The same thing for the Jewish religion. There's different segments within that religion that make up the ethnicity that people will then say. So it's really something that is based on your culture, your religion, or your nationality. And so depending on what you or where you fall or what's most important to you in those categories, you will then be able to describe your ethnicity. Can I ask where you're from or where you were born?
I'm from Iran.
You're from Iran, right?
Yeah.
And so if you think about what you would describe yourself as a person from Iran or like it's citizens of Iran or a cultural group within Iran, if there's different ones, right? You might have a specific one that you will decide. Do you know what, do you understand what I mean? Do you have an example of that?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. So
Yeah,
that's
thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're very welcome.
I got it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Miranda, do you have a question for our guest speaker?
I don't have a question. I think she spoke everything so well.
Very clear, right?
Yeah, very clear, and
Yeah,
I agree with many of her ideas and opinions.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm from China. I think we in China we don't have many different races. We do have like 56 ethnicities. But yeah, I think like you said, I actually didn't realize that race is a problem when I was very young. We didn't talk about it even. But when I think in Canada, as it's a multicultural, also with different people with different races, that's really a problem. Is kind of everywhere in the workplace and in the society, and also in the political arena. It is a huge topic. I mean, need a lot of people to work on.
Yes. Thank you for that. That's exactly, and China's a perfect example of how you can think about race. Doesn't necessarily seem to be very visible, but ethnicities will be, right? So
Sure.
Yeah. And so that's why we have to sort of understand the difference, because you could be of the same race and different ethnicity, or you could be of different ethnicities, but then share race with a different group, another person, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. McPherson, I know you gave a TV interview on the research you have done with Black girls, and I really love that. And I was wondering, maybe before you leave the chat room, if you could share the link so that the students watch it after the workshop.
Oh, for sure. Yes, I will definitely. I could send that link to you, and then you could share it. Yes, and that was what I was talking about towards the end of the talk in terms of identifying some of the concerns specifically for Black girls or for Black children. And that's what the research does. It's so broad because there's so many different things that we have to consider and think about in relation to race and in relation to ethnicity.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for your discussion and how you explain things so clearly and related to the Canadian context. So that makes it relevant to all of us. Thank you so much, Dr. McPherson. Our guest speaker will leave the Zoom room now, but everyone else, please stay on. We will cover the material we prepared for today. Thank you so much, Dr. McPherson.
Thank you so very much for having me, and enjoy the rest of your class and enjoy the rest of the series. And yes, good luck.
All right. Thank you. Now I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. What is that? It's a jar of
candy.
Candy. What kind of candy?
Jelly candy? No, it's not jelly.
Jelly beans. Yeah, jelly beans.
Jelly.
So that's sugar glazed candy that is shaped like beans. Yeah. Now, we are not going to talk about jelly beans. We are going to watch a video which uses jelly beans to explain the difference between race and ethnicity, okay? Although Dr. Keisha McPherson made such a good distinction between the two of them. Now, before we go ahead and watch this video, I would like to share the questions with you. So if you check the chat box, I'm going to share the file. All right. I'm also going to show the questions here on my screen. So we have a few questions. The purpose of this video is, number 2, using jelly beans, the speaker defines race as color and ethnicity as the flavor, and you have to decide whether that is true or false. Number 3, race and ethnicity have similar meanings. 4, race is based on a person's, fill in the blanks, multiple choice, A, B, C, or D. Question number 5, it is possible to have parents with different racial backgrounds. Number 6, 2 people who share the same race can have different ethnicities, and you have to decide whether that is true or false. And last 2 questions, that's a little bit of vocab. Heritage does not mean, okay, does not mean. So you have to choose a word whose meaning is opposite, different. And the last one, increasingly, that's an adverb means. So you need to choose a synonym, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, I would like for you to open the document on your computer screen, okay, so that you see the questions. And I'm going to go ahead and play the video. Let's hope it works well. We're going to listen to it twice. And then we will check the questions together. All right, here it goes.
Race, ethnicity, and nationality are 3 terms that get thrown around a lot, and all too often they're used interchangeably, ignored, or just used incorrectly. But each of these words actually has a very distinct meaning, and I'm going to talk about them today using my favorite candy, jelly beans. Let's start with race. Now, you may have heard someone say, race is a human construct, and that's true. Race is a mode of categorization that's based on physical appearance. So in the case of jelly beans, race is color. Because race is based on appearance, to some degree it's ascribed, meaning that people are assigned into racial categories based on what other people see. Even if somebody could be mistaken for a certain racial category, it can still apply to them. These categories are fluid, and our ideas of racial groupings change all the time. It's also important to remember that a person can have parents with 2 different racial backgrounds. The population of the world is becoming increasingly mixed, but even a person with multiple races will still ultimately belong to a racial category themselves, whether or not it's the same as their parents. Race is a huge factor in daily life, but it isn't the whole picture. The term race does not capture the complexities of ethnicity. Ethnicity refers to the ethnic group or groups that a person belongs to. It's a part of a person's heritage and ancestry. In the case of jelly beans, ethnicity is like the flavor. 2 people who are in the same racial group can still have very different ethnicities. For example, all of these are red, but this one is cinnamon and this one is cherry. 2 people in the same racial group can and often do have very different backgrounds. It's important to note that there are some groups who are unable to trace their specific ethnic heritage because of things like slavery, assimilation, and genocide. Ethnicity is a huge part of identity formation and development.
All right, so let's go ahead and check these comprehension questions. We are going to look at Miranda's screen, okay? So Miranda, let's see the first answer.
The first answer, I think, is to explain the difference between race and ethnicity.
That's good. That's good. How about the second question, Shaika?
I think true is true.
It's true. So race is defined as color and ethnicity as the flavor.
Yes.
All right, very good. How about number 3, Marjan?
Number 3, in my opinion, I think that race and ethnicity have a similar meaning. No, they don't have a similar meaning.
All right,
It's
so
not
it's
true.
false. Yes.
Yes. False.
So, yes, Shaika. Number 3, Miranda, yeah? So you could color that, I don't know, a different color. 3B, false. All right, very good.
The false, okay.
Yes, it's false. They do not have similar meanings. How about question number 4, Miranda?
Race is based on person's physical appearance.
Definitely. So 4B. Thank you. Number 5, Shaika?
Number 5 is false. Yes, true.
It's true. Okay, so parents might have different racial backgrounds. All right, number 5
Yes.
is true. Very good. Thank you. How about number 6, Marjan?
2 people who share the same race can have different ethnicity. True.
That's true. Awesome. Number 7, Marjan answered. How about Miranda? Heritage.
I'm not sure about this one. I think heritage mean legacy.
I think it's roots.
Okay, yeah. So if you think of heritage, you could say roots, background, legacy. All right. So that does not go with B, descendants. Okay, something that comes after. So all the other options A, C, and D are synonyms, words that have a similar meaning with heritage, except for B, descendants. All right. So good.
Okay.
That's B, 7B. And how about the last one, Shaika? Increasingly means.
Increasing more and more. Yes.
Great, more and more. All right, so Miranda, you got all of them except for the one that you chose true and it was false, right?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share you some vocabulary that I put together. So race, that's classification of people into different groups based on physical characteristics such as skin, hair, eye color, and or social factors. So Black or African American, white or Caucasian. And here is an example about myself. If I were to describe myself in terms of race, I'd say that I'm a white, Caucasian, able-bodied woman. Moving on to ethnicity, a simple definition would be classification of people based on cultural factors, such as language, nationality, religion, right? And I gave 2 examples here. As far as his ethnicity is concerned, my husband is Jewish Canadian. His first language is English. In terms of my ethnicity, I am Eastern European Christian, and English is my second language. So I'm going to leave this for you to see. If you could write 1 or 2 sentences about yourselves, about your race and ethnicity, maybe we share them in the chat, or you write them in a Word document and then you share your screen. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. Look at these examples and definitions you can see on the screen, and let's try to talk or write a little bit about ourselves in terms of race and ethnicity, okay?
May I ask, what is able-bodied?
Okay, that's a good question. Able-bodied, I'm physically able to walk, to do whatever I want. It's the opposite of abled, right?
Okay, so that's not something related to race.
Well, it's physical, right? So I added a little bit more. When people say that, they also point that out.
Okay.
So I thought I would stay there. it's physical, so it ties into race.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and see if you guys managed to write something. If not, that's okay. We're going to move on. Marjan, how about you?
For ethnicity, I want to say that in my ethnicity, if someone wants to change his or her religion, it is forbidden.
Okay, okay. How about you, Miranda? Anything you'd like to share with us in terms of race and ethnicity?
I don't know if it's correct or not. I wrote I'm a yellow Asian woman.
I wouldn't go for yellow, right? And also,
Is a color or what is it?
yeah, you could say, so that's a broad category to say Asian, right? And then I would mention, like, for me, for instance, religion is not so important, right? So I don't really talk about it much, right? And then when it comes to race, I mentioned able-bodied, and you said that's not race. For me, that's important because I feel privileged to be able to walk, to dance, to do whatever I want, right? So these would be the things that I refer to. And white Caucasian, because I'm doing research with people, you know, from different racial categories. But it is what's important to you, right? Language for me is really important, right? I study languages, I teach languages, right? So you could refer to that in terms of ethnicity. It's what's important to you. What is that you're going to take away to talk about yourself, right? How about Shaika? Did you write anything? Would you like to share something with us in terms of your race and ethnicity?
I think race, my country is not important. Ethnicity, I is I'm Tajik.
Say again, please. Ethnicity is?
Tajik. I'm Tajik.
What do you mean, Shaika?
The name is ethnicity.
So when you think of ethnicity, right, it's a broader category, right? And I put here these examples, like think of your language, nationality, religion. So nationality, think of your country of origin, right?
I
So you
think
would say, what is your first language? You would say, where do you come from, right? You don't have to touch on religion. Some people don't talk about that
yes,
much.
my first language is Dari.
Okay, and English would be your second or your third language?
A second language.
Okay, see, so that's part of your ethnicity. And then nationality, some of you might have become Canadian citizens, so you would add that to your ethnicity, but then you might also want to mention the country where you were born, right, where you come from. So as far as I'm concerned, I was born and raised in Romania, but then I immigrated to Canada, so I would say that I am Romanian Canadian, right? So those two aspects go with my ethnicity. All right, like I said, this is this is not easy, so we'll have more time to talk about that for you to take in these new concepts of race and ethnicity. I would like to move.
Can I say Canada welcomes people of all
races? Yes, that's a good example.
All races, yeah. Races or race?
Races, people of all races, different races.
Yeah, Canada welcomes people of all races.
Yes, that's a very good example, Marjan.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and have the three of you. I'm going to put you in the breakout room to let you discuss, and then we come back and we share the answers. So it's a scenario for discussion. I'm going to choose scenario A. You work in a large restaurant. There are 30 staff altogether, of which usually only 10 members show up to the meetings, including yourself. These 10 people complain that they do most of the work and need help from the other 20 members. At today's meeting, 2 Latina women show up who are older than most of the other staff and are new to the restaurant. No one says hi when they arrive, and they sit in the back. 30 minutes after the meeting has started, the manager realizes that he has not introduced them and asks them to introduce themselves. No one else is asked to introduce themselves, and after the two women introduce themselves, the meeting continues and they are not spoken to again. So this is the context, okay? And then we have 4 questions for you to try and answer based on this scenario. Keep in mind, you do not have to agree with each other, all right? I just want you to use this for discussion, and then we are going to share the answers, okay? I'm also going to share this scenario in the chat box. All right, so let's have a look at the second scenario, and I'm gonna let you go through the questions and share your answers. So this time it says, you work in a large restaurant in downtown. The staff are meeting to discuss changes for the next year. There are 15 members, 13 of whom are white native English speakers, including yourself, and 2 are women of color. At the meeting, the staff disagree about priorities. What's most important? Priorities. You notice that some of the white women are dominating the conversation, and that the 2 women of color are interrupted by the others more often than the white members. By the end of the meeting, one of the women of color has stopped speaking up. All right, so this is the scenario, and then we have these 4 questions. The first one, how do you think that the 2 women of color felt during the meeting?
I think that there is a sense of defeat.
Okay.
You know, that they think that something that other people, they interrupted them all the time, and then it's like you know, that when someone wants to say something to another person, it's not important say something very clearly. For interrupted them, it's another things that they can do for control the others. And then I think that they the sense of this woman, color woman, it's like a different.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So they were made to feel that they were different.
Different and
in a good way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks for your answer. How about Miranda? What do you think?
I think they probably would think the other 13 native speakers are doing something, especially not welcoming them, not want them to be involved.
Yeah, not
their opinions and also their position are not important.
Not important, not welcomed. Yes, yeah. I see what you mean. Yes. How about the second question? So if you were there, would you have done something, and what could you have done or said?
I think I would remind the person who was in charge of the meeting, and to let her or like him to give the opportunity for those two women to speak.
To allow the 2 women of color to speak. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. How about you, Marjan?
This question, it means that if I were instead of the color woman.
Not one of the 2 women of color. If you were one of the other white native English speakers, yeah, it asks you to imagine. It's a scenario we imagine.
Yeah, you know that I've never do something like that. Always when I saw some people, they are in a minority, I ask them to join us and then say something. And then if someone interrupt them, and then I ask them, don't interrupt this, you know, that, don't interrupt them. I say something like that. If even if I don't, I'm not in charge person, I'm don't have any, for example, I'm not supervisor, or I'm not in a high position. Even if I am in another, as a, that as a staff there, that's okay. I say other people don't interrupt them.
I see. So you would stand up for those two women who are
Yeah,
being
exactly.
marginalized. Okay, all right. Let's have a look at the third question. So things like this happen. What could we do to stop this from happening in the future? So people of a different race, ethnicity, they are being marginalized. And now we are not thinking just about this scenario. Think of your classroom or your jobs. What could we do to prevent such situations from happening?
I think the company can set up certain rules, like everyone is welcomed and to speak out their own opinion, even their opinions are different from others. Different opinions should be encouraged to be spoken out. Also, I think they need to have a culture to raise their employees' awareness about the, the discrimination or the racist issue within their company.
I agree with you. Yes, yes. So we need rules, and we need to raise the employees' awareness with regards to different races, nationalities, accents. All right, very good. I loved your answer, Miranda. What do you think, Shaika and Marjan?
I think the manager is respect all staff and don't interrupt when they say something or talking, and don't interrupt and
Okay, so you should be the manager, the one who respects and allows the other to be part of the conversation. All right, yes. How about you, Marjan? What do you think?
I think education is so important. Education, orientation, socialization is so important in every company. Even though in a society, in everywhere, education is so important. When we say that, for example, we say that here we don't, in Canada, we don't have any, we don't accept any racism, and
Yeah.
then Canada is a multicultural country, and then every new commerce, and we can educate them that here we don't have a racism. And always I think education, education, education.
All right, I'm going to stop it there. Education, education, education. I totally agree with you, Marjan. Thank you. Let's move on. I would like to do one more activity with you guys. Do you know who this woman is?
I don't know. Just maybe she's from India.
Maybe she's from India. Yeah.
I don't know.
Miranda, have you seen her picture before?
No.
No, that's okay.
Is she very famous?
She is famous. She is a Canadian poet. Her name is Rupi Kaur.
Oh.
She writes beautiful poems. She also illustrates some of them. And so for today, I chose a short poem. I'm going to go ahead and read it, and then we are going to have a look at some questions. Feel free to look her up online. She has so many beautiful poems. Some of them are recorded as well. Her parents are immigrants. They come from India. And so that is an important aspect of her identity, and she writes about that. So here is her poem. I want to apologize to all the women I have called pretty before I've called them intelligent or brave. I am sorry I made it sound as though something as simple as what you're born with is the most you have to be proud of. when your spirit has crushed mountains. From now on, I will say things like you are resilient or you are extraordinary, not because I don't think you're pretty, but because you are so much more than that. So this is the poem. And what I like about her poems is that they're beautiful and quite deep. The language that she uses seems simple and yet profound. Now, before we have a look at the questions, do you know the word resilient? I have highlighted it. Do you know what it means? Resilient.
Resilient means even in front of difficulties, or you're still be confident or brave.
Very good, very good. I love your
Like adoption, when you adopt yourself in new situation very quickly. Is it like that?
Yes, you adapt. Yes, very good. So it's about someone. So that could be a person, that could also be an animal, right? Someone who is able to recover quickly from difficult situations, difficult conditions. So someone who is strong, who is tough, overcomes difficult moments. All right. Now let's have a quick look at the questions here, and I'm going to have you work here in the main room to answer them. So how does this poem make you feel? Why is she apologizing about? And what do you think this expression means when your spirit has crushed mountains? And then if we have time, I would like for each of you to think of a woman that you like and respect and tell us a little bit about her. So how does this poem make you feel?
You know that here I think that he was mentioned to that again segmented between boy and girl. You know that when a girl was born, we say that, oh, she's very pretty girl, beautiful girl, before we say that she is, maybe she's very smart. And but at first we say, oh, she's so cute, she's so beautiful, pretty girl, something like that. And then she said that I wanted to apologize that
More than that, right?
Yeah, you are more than that.
You're
just, it's not pretty good. It's not real. Yeah, something like that, I think.
Yeah. How about Miranda and Sheikha? What do you guys think?
I think it's quite common, like the whole society. I think the appearance of women are more important than other characters.
Yes.
That's quite common, and it's not only like for male to think about this. I think women also sometimes have the similar opinions. We see the physical appearance as very important part of our self. Sometimes it's more than other things, but actually that's the kind of thing we cannot change. We are born with that appearance. If we're not like as pretty as that girl, we still have our own things to be proud of. Yeah, I think this poem is very beautiful and also encouraging.
I think so. I agree with you. We are born with the way we look, right? But I think we could change the way we respond to this. Like you said, Miranda, and also Marjan. Yes, women are beautiful, depending on how you define beauty, but there's more than that to it, right? So it's how we perceive it, what we think as a priority. It's also being smart, it's also being good at sports, music, and so on and so forth, right? But like you said, Miranda, apparently physical appearance outweighs other qualities when it comes to women. Sheikha, what do you think?
I think I feel good because she said woman is very intelligent and brave and strong, never give up, And
Yeah. 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 Through her poem, she is encouraging women to keep being
yes,
resilient and not to give up. And she acknowledges, like you guys said, that they are not just beautiful, they are smart and strong. Now, let's see for the remainder of the workshop. Do you have it could be a role model, it could be a mother, sister, someone that you like and respect that you would like to talk to us a bit about? So a woman you like and respect, and tell us why.
I have one aunt. She's
Yeah.
very strong. Now she is about 90 years old.
Yeah.
And she she has never any child, and her husband died 30 years ago. Always she lived alone, and then she is very smart, and you know that she can do everything. Even now, she is 90 years old. She cleaned her house, and she fixed everything in her house. And then you know that she can talk about the political. She can talk about art. She can talk about everything that you can imagine. She can talk about the artists. She can talk about the movie. Uh, Always she updates herself with the new things and the new generation. You can talk with him in those days and these days, and she can explain difference about those days and these days. She's so smart and she's very strong. I've never heard that she complain about something that she said that, okay, I don't have any children. Why I should do this? Some people, you know, that we are alone, and then we don't need to do something, but she never thinks something like that. Always she cooks and for herself. Even sometimes we say that we are alone. Why we don't need to cook? We can go outside and go to a restaurant. She never done something like that, and she's so strong. And then she has many hopeless, you know that. Yeah, I think that this kind of guys are very important.
That's a great role model to have. She sounds like a sophisticated, strong, open-minded, and
Yeah,
independent woman. Yes, yes. Thank you so much.
yes,
Uh,
okay.
do you keep in touch with her now that you're in Canada, Marjan?
she's not in Canada. She's in
Or do
Iran.
you keep in touch? Do you keep in touch
Yeah,
with
yeah, yeah,
her?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's great.
Always.
Keep it up. Keep it up. Love it. Love
Yeah.
it. How
Oh,
about you, Miranda? Do you have an example of someone that you look up to?
I have a friend. She was my schoolmate when we were in the universities, and she was the one of the top students in among, I think, more than 100 students. And
Yeah.
she got the first prize scholarship, and also she went to US to continue her higher education. I
Yeah.
think she has done everything very well, and also she speaks like perfect English. She's excellent at everything, but she now is kind of work as part-time because she wants to put more effort on her two children. And also I think her husband is also our schoolmate. I think she made a sacrifice to support her family. That's not the theme of a feminist, but I think it's still a lot of good trait as women we can learn from, because we not only like an employee, or we also probably a mother or a wife. We have different positions. We need to think about it. If we can do in one area already very good, then we can focus on the area. We don't have to feel shame about what we are doing, like we don't have achievement in our career. That's also, I think that's also okay for us. I think the whole society should change the opinions about career and also family. As a homemaker, I think it's not kind of, we're not doing anything. Actually, we're doing a lot of things, everything to support our family. It's also, I think it's as important as you like take an important role in the company.
I couldn't agree more. And it's not just either one or the other, career or family. I think it's really important that she was able to decide on her priorities, right?
Yeah, that's
career,
true.
and now it's time to focus on her family. I really like the fact that you chose as a role model or someone you look up to, someone who's about your age. We tend to choose, women who are older than us, and I really like the example you've given. And I agree with what you said in terms of how we look at women who should not just focus on families, but also on their career and so on. Shaika, how about you? Do you have an example you would like to share with us?
I want to say my mom didn't go school because father not don't like it, but always encourage me and my brother, my sister, encourage go to school and study more. Unfortunately, my country is the war. I can't study and at the university. Only finish high school. But my mom always encouraged we go to school and study more. She wish.
I see, and I understand that. So although she wasn't able to attend school, she helped you and your sister, and that ties into my one of my role models. It's quite similar to yours. It's my grandmother who did not have the chance to go to school, but she supported my mother, and so I look up to her. All right, I'm going to call it a day. We can stay on because I know that Marjan has some questions, and I also wanted to share something else with you guys. But thank you all for being here, sharing your experiences and thoughts. As always, lovely contributions.